playing out decently statted minions and hoping for the best. There's a lot more to it than that, but we'll get into it when that comes along. Hi3 now is rocking the Mage out of the gate, and I'm not entirely sure if you can look for an especially different strategy. I think you are just going for basically the same thing as what Chonsu went for at the end of the last series, but just pray for slightly better results.
Absolutely. Starting off with Font of Power is a great way to get that online. Not quite the early encounters flow that you want to see, but again, Hi3 does not even have access to Lunacy, so he is going to be satisfied with just a minion curve for now. Glory picks up Crimson Hothead. That's always good to give him a bit of defensive potential later on.
Yeah, these are pretty good starts for both players here, to be honest. Development from minions on both sides. 6 mana Jandice is not looking quite so tempting, but I think you're still happy to see it.
That still drew an ooh from me. I think it's still a great pick, or sorry, a great thing to get off of the Font of Power. And on top of that, Hi3 gets a play for this turn, great, and Babbling Book, which is value generation. You're never too upset to see that, but this Crimson Hothead is probably eating the first Devolving Missiles here.
You would think so. And then I guess you can adapt from there as to how you want to spend your mana. Rune Orb would not be a terrible way to go about things. I don't think you want to use your hero power even with it being buffed up here if possible, because you just want to start spending some of these resources. You have Refreshing Spring Water as well, which means this is just a hand that wants to be spent.
Right. And going over this matchup when you're not on the Lunacy game plan, I think the Mage wants to be as aggressive right out of the gate as possible. If you have a chance to seize board and actually deal damage with minions, that's a bonus. Your deck is not necessarily built to deal with that, but to me, there's no better use of Devolving Missiles than to just allow you to push more damage to the face. Hi3 gonna start off with the Rune Orb instead, though disagrees, and we'll see what he gets. Ooh.
I'm liking the Fireball. You can get fancy with Potion of Illusion to try and copy Jandice, but feels far from guaranteed.
Wow, this is a lot of respect to deal with the Hothead as well. He expends the coin, which is the one thing I didn't want to see because Jandice.
It's like the first decision that Hi3 has made on stream, and I vehemently disagree with it. Like the coin there, it was good for Jandice, but even just for a Pexis Blast next turn, like if you really want to get damage on the board, this just makes this hand so slow. And I get that you want to save Devolving Missiles for an Apotheosis minion, a minion buffed up with some of the generated cards from Sethek, but what is this now? Like, your hand doesn't do anything on this turn.
Well, it drew cards, and for Hi3's sake, he thankfully drew Incanter's Flow, something to spend his mana on. But yeah, falling behind here and having to use the Devolving on the Scorpion feels so counterintuitive to had he done it had done it the other way around. Like, there could have been a 1-drop on the other side, and between having ping and a 3-2 on the board, he could have cleared it that way, and then he could have potentially stuck a minion and then just used Rune Orb for this Scorpion. It just feels bad.
Does feel bad, but for Glory, this feels pretty good. Huge amount of mana reduction from this Palm Readings, follow up with the Draconic Studies, and again, just try and find one of these big threats. Oh, more value. Great. Threats on the board. I love the way that these players are playing the Priest.
And Draconic Studies is pretty much guaranteed to give you threats these days. It's only Brightwing that's small. And yes, these are extremely expensive, but at some point, Onyxia can allow you to not just remove from the Mage, but actually push your own initiative. You build a board that is difficult for Mage to actually get rid of, especially since Frost Nova is not in Standard anymore. And then you can put the clock on the other side instead.
That was a close one, wasn't it? I was kind of looking at Ysera just as like the best card of the bunch, but I guess against Mage, like, you don't often need to clear minions that heavily, and Onyxia is just more precious, so fine. Fully on board with this pick. Tempo Zarella, sure. I guess you get the clear.
I mean, Mage just doesn't really put minions on board. I mean, he'll be upset to see the Jandice in response, but Glory had no way of knowing, especially if you see the early coin used.
I mean, with that pickup, it kind of like just combustion on the Zarella. At the end, sure, you can see what you get.
Yeah, absolutely. this removes failure rate and also a failure rate off of Jandice for that turn and is much less punished by Apotheosis. So with that draw, absolutely.
And now palm readings, spirits, and maybe even Gift of Luminance to close things out again. It's just pressure, pressure, pressure. This is what the Priest wants to do, because if you have minions on board, Mask of Cthulhu can't go face, and spell damage or burst damage has to be cast on minions.
Not the greatest minion to get, but I want to double back and really emphasize how good it was for Glory in theory, in a vacuum, to pick the Auspicious Spirits 2 turns ago, because he really didn't have minion generation aside from that. Like, if you get in the mindset that you're a control deck, it's very often that, oh, I'm just going to take every Apotheosis I can get, but a lot of the time you don't even stick a minion. So Glory finding the window to get a minion on board, definitely useful, and that's why I kind of expect to see, I was going to say at least Gift of Luminance, but Glory's taking it one step further with both the Apotheosis and the Gift of Luminance.
I like this a lot. The ways that this can be dealt with is like specifically devolving missiles that you have already seen one of in the list. It's unlikely that they have the second. If they do, this is pretty bad. Admittedly, this was a risky turn from Glory. But even then, if these get devolved into 6 drops, that's still a lot of tempo that you're getting on the board there.
Yeah, it is so problematic for Hi3 here. He also doesn't have the luxury of avoiding them because they have lifesteal. If the 7 attack one gets to hit face even once, then pretty much whatever damage Hi3 does this turn is mitigated. So, man, is it gonna have to be Cram Session? I don't even know what he can draw off of this. The Mask, most of the time gets rid of the 1/1 and then just removes the shield off the 7/7. If you're very lucky, the 4/4 will also be able to kill off the 7/7 after the fact, and maybe you do have to just bite that bullet.
Imprisoned Phoenix to set up for one big swing turn. Like, I guess if you just accept that they're going to heal for 1 million, then Phoenix here is fine, but it looks like he's just settling on Tempo Jandice at the end, which will happily be gobbled up by the Divine Shields. But I guess another Raz here for the 3rd time already today off of these generated 5-cost minions is good enough.
That's nuts. But so is 6 mana Soul Mirror, if I do say so myself. That Glory can even pair with Condemn for a full clear without having to take any trades. Because the Raz will then just go off at the end of the turn for the last 1 damage he needs on the opposing Raz.
Yeah, I love how liberal he's being with his resources here. With Onyxia still in hand as well, he realizes he's just dominating the board. Hi3 does not have the ability to clear this the majority of the time. And if he does, there's just another follow-up. The removal isn't needed from Glory. He is the aggressor.
Hi3 finally forced to blink. I absolutely agree with this turn, at least, that he could not afford to take any more damage. The Phoenix is going to take quite a while to go off, but if he can hold on, there is hope with these Cram Sessions because Glory did go very aggressive with his hand. However, that was not a bad game plan for Glory whatsoever, because he did take, well in advance, some very powerful redevelopment.
And I think this is really just the difference of what it feels like to play on the big leagues of Hearthstone. Because, you know, in many games, as you go up the ranks, it doesn't necessarily feel like anything especially flashier is being done. It's just your mistakes get punished the majority of the time. And when you're in Grandmasters, pretty much all the time, your mistakes are going to be punished. And even though we can argue back and forth about Hi3's early turns, it just felt like he was a little unsure in the matchup, wasn't parceling out his resources or passing out his resources quite effectively enough. And it just means that Glory is able to dominate this board here in the end.
Interesting that he holds back on the Onyxia, though. My first instinct was to just play all of it, but Glory could be thinking because he was able to heal all the way back up, this gives him even more value to be able to milk out of the Onyxia sometimes, because he wouldn't necessarily get all the 1/1s. Whether or not I agree with that is up for discussion, but maybe he's just waiting for the Phoenix to go off so he could kill it and then play Onyxia, but that theory has been disproven as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he may be on just like Flame Strike being too strong at that point with the Raz in play as well. Yeah, either way, a very powerful turn coming in at this point for Hi3. He gets to draw 6 cards should he want to, all of which are reduced. This is the opportunity for which he has been waiting to swing this one around.
He's just dying. I don't think
he is just dying.
He has to brain freeze. I mean, it feels. I was looking at brain freeze combustion here. Oh, okay. Now if you get.
You mean the
actual brain freeze? Yes, I was talking about. Sorry, but
No
Hi3's draws certainly changed the game plan around. Now he even gets the cheaper Mask of Cthulhu for a very nice clear, pushing as much face damage as possible, and Glory is out of good board development.
Yeah. Again, it does raise the question as to why he didn't go for the Onyxia one turn early. I would be interested to hear his reasoning there, because that was like, it was going to be much easier to clear on the turn that goes into the Phoenix rising up rather than one turn prior, even if he gets less whelps because of the Raz in play. Interesting.
It just felt like a turn where even if there was Flame Strike without the Phoenix, then Onyxia just regenerates the board.
Yeah.
I like. Totems I love.
Getting closer now here, though.
Yeah, Hi3 with that tech of Deep Freeze in this deck means that he can get some more minion presence. It's not all reliant on Mask of Cthulhu and Fireball, but those are certainly the cards that he has earmarked to close out the game. Ring Toss plus Deep Freeze looks good to me.
Super clean. Save the burn damage to follow up at the end, and then you're just picking the tempo ones, right? Like Rigged Fair Game, Oasis Ally.
Yeah.
All of these
Looks
seem
like,
good.
yeah. It looked like he picked Netherwind off the first one. I was looking at even Rigged Fair Game off the first one, but since it was a choice for the second. Interesting, though, that he really didn't want card draw in the end there, which is fair. He has Arcane Intellect already and only 7 cards left in the deck. Not going for minions here is surprising to me. It is presenting problems for Glory, sure. Maybe Hi3 was trying to respect a Samuro play.
And again, just an annoying old 4-drop for Glory to deal with. He needs that Apo to go with the Samuro.
Yeah, it's too expensive to use here just to get rid of the Worm Weaver. I don't know what it's called, but
yeah,
if he uses Hysteria here and it sticks on the board, well, Hi3 just gets 2 more Mana Worms, and it feels like the Hysteria did very little in the long run.
I mean, his game plan could just be you don't have Fireball in hand, and if you do, I lose. Because the only alternative is Samuro / Sethic, and then Hysteria to clear everything off the board. Yeah.
Okay. Because there was Water Elemental, he didn't actually have to play Samuro this turn.
He didn't, yeah.
I'm looking at the list from Hi3. I believe both of the Mask of Cthulhu had been played, so there's also not that argument for putting more health on the board.
Yeah, I agree.
So it looks a bit strange.
More and more damage with the spell damage. Definitely helps to try and close this one out.
Wow, Hi3 just trying to see the bottom of his deck. Those are the last 2 cards, Primordial Studies, Ruined Orb. All right.
I guess Aegwin 0 mana Ruined Orb is where he's at on this turn. Like,
I just don't know why you wouldn't Deep Freeze at this point. I mean, it's just more damage on board. He saw Hysteria.
Like, I can get it before you've seen the Samuro, because then it's more healing with Samuro Apotheosis. But at this point, it's, you know, you can devolve it away, and then it's just more pressure on the board.
Sure. If it was Deep Freeze, he would also have to, like, Brain Freeze first to expend the Spell Burst on that.
Yeah.
I made that mistake yesterday. I will not be doing that again. And in the end, Hi3 is just shipping as much damage face as possible right now. And even though we were nitpicky at the end, there are very few individual draws to get Glory out of this.
And I don't think that is going to be it.
Nope, not that.
Still Renew?
Yeah.
Yeah, silence away the spell damage. You're just looking for death anyway, right?
1 mana left. There's just... it's just not getting there. So even though it looked like Glory was in the driver's seat at the beginning there, Hi3 aggressively drawing for removal and one big turn of combustion, brain freeze, getting rid of all of Glory's value essentially, because he did just put all of it onto the board, allowed Hi3 to win almost from a control position.
Yeah, and I mean, going back, there's a couple of things. I mean, talking about having your mistakes punished, I'm kind of looking at that the other way around for Glory, because there were a couple of key decision points. Firstly, picking the Onyxia, and secondly, when to play it. Like, he could have done it one turn earlier, obviously, to put a bit of extra pressure on the board, try and force that damage to close out the game. I do like the decision he went for with Sourfang and buffing it and putting the Divine Shield on it. It was going to be very, very difficult for Hi3 to deal with. And again, if he hadn't got the Raz, I think that was just looking like a pretty blowout win there for Glory. It was a couple of very fortunate things that had to happen for Hi3, but he got them, he played to them, and then in the end, the burst damage was just the perfect amount to win the game.
True. I mean, I am still doubting the use of coin from Hi3, but because the result ended the way it did, of course, we do have to analyze what happened with Glory as well. And you did bring up the Onyxia. Picking it, I liked it, you didn't. Fair. But if you are going to pick it, it did feel strange to not play it the second it was immediately available, because it felt like Glory's game plan was very much in that line of just trying to beat down the Priest.
Yeah, I would fully agree with that. But the Mage taking the win, I think, is a big deal. A potential weak point. You know, if you don't hit the early Incantus flows or the draws, with no Deck of Lunacy in there, it can be a bit of a rough spot. But just showing that even without that, Spell Mage is still a fearsome archetype for sure. And now the Aggro Paladin coming in for Glory. A list that we were a little confused by from him and Alutemu, to be perfectly honest. You know, Talon Fordring at the top there felt, at first glance, obviously very misplaced in the deck because it's a 5-mana 3/3 in an aggro deck. But when we played it a little bit more, there were actually, every time I top-decked it, I was fairly happy. I wasn't happy to have it in my starting hand, obviously, because it was just very, very slow. But when you find it later on, it can start to justify the spot, or the slot, in my opinion.
Sure. I mean, we did already go over the Kazakus, kind of what looks like the main purpose for playing Talon, which is to pull Kazakus, which then feels weird because you ideally want to play your 5-drop on 5, but then you're getting your 4+1 or 4+5 drop on turn 6, which never feels too clean. But I think it's just a symptom of this deck's extreme lack of card draw. You do run Knight of Anointment and Sword of the Fallen and Hand of Adal, all things that were in the old Libram Paladin, but the difference was Libram Paladin had better usage of their late turns because they had those heavy hitting cards. To me, it just feels like this is definitely not a refined list. This definitely looks like a list that was made with half a day to prepare the patch meta, and if it's still getting wins in there, I definitely have hopes for the Paladin to keep being refined. On the other hand, Hi3's Rush Warrior, I just love this deck. I think it's so sweet. It might not be the best, and I'm seeing versions out there that are not running ETC. Instead, they have, I think, the Troublemaker at the top end, a bit more burst damage, and that might be the way to go. But it's just so satisfying to play Ringmaster Wadley. It's great.
Yeah, it's such. Yeah, exactly. It's such a cool list to play these kind of buff-heavy warrior decks. I love hand buffing as a mechanic. I think it's really, really fun to get these huge swing turns. As especially, there's a lot of tricks you have to learn with the deck. When you have Parade Leader, Playmaker, Rakara, Runthak, all these weird legendaries and minions that, when synergized correctly, can lead to a very, very different game plan. But on the other hand, you can't just play all your cards on curve, and against an aggro deck, you're probably in a good spot because most of your cards have rush. You can gain board control very easily, and then use these huge draw and buff effects at the end to close out the game.
You put it perfectly. I think the Warrior should be in a very good spot against this Paladin. It also plays very few spells, so Oh My Yog is honestly not that scary for this Warrior. It's the Avenge that's the big one, because Warrior also doesn't often play 3 cards in a turn. I find like you're wanting to play your 1-drop on 1, maybe Crab Rider on 2, something to that extent, and then you do just curve up all the way to 5, and then you have, in Hi3's case, Alexstrasza and Rattlegore for the lower matchups in the end.
Yeah, I am a big fan of the Troublemakers, I will admit. I think that fitted very nicely in the deck, just as another minion that has to be removed. There's so many minions in this deck, Runthak, Rakara, Playmaker, ETC, Parade Leader, that if you don't kill them on the turn they're played, you kind of just lose. And so having another one of those questions that needs to be answered does slot well into the deck. But even just looking at this hand, like you can see the way this deck works. Bumper Car to try and plow through and stay on the board with Rakara for an extra instant buff. It's only the Hand of Adal on a Divine Shield minion that makes this awkward now.
Yeah. But when it does get awkward, boy does it get awkward. That was the card that Hi3 did not want to see whatsoever. Now the Bumper Car, if it pings off the shield, it immediately dies, and the 2/1/1s you get off of that, yes, they synergize with Parade Leader, but it feels like a lot of resources to sink into that Righteous Protector.
Well, I was definitely...
Take a look at just what these cards are, because they haven't really seen play in Standard before.
Yeah, the Bumper Car is a surprisingly crucial part of the mix. It looks like a very... honestly understated card at first glance. Like, for what is a fairly aggressive deck, 1 attack on a 2-drop feels very low. But it's the fact that you get 2 extra minions in your hand that synergize so gorgeously with the rest of the deck that really just rounds it out so beautifully as a whole.
Agreed. It's also a mech for Ringmaster Watley to draw. In the end, I agree with Hi3's decision to play ETC here. This is not an OTK deck where you want to just utilize ETC with Broom to kill them immediately. This is just a card that feels like, I can deal a lot of extra damage if this sticks, or if I've stuck any minions and then just play the ETC, it can be reach. I'm not a big fan of it in refined lists, but the fact that it has 4 health here is a really big deal for Glory, because not only is it able to ping off the shield, it means that the axe from the Gunarg next turn is much more powerful.
I must move quickly.
Glory has these very emotive reactions to secrets. I don't really know what.
Right. I mean, we can see on the track here that it was Avenge, I think, that was gained off of the sword there, which seems like a good one. In all honesty, it allows you to keep board control much more easily. Because you know that this swing is coming through 100%.
Gonna go ahead and test. He'll get the news that this is now a 4-3, and he can coin Parade Leader Bumper Car because there's no more secret in play. And he's just like that, so ahead on the board, even though Glory had what's pretty much the best possible start in Paladin. Good 1-drop into buff into sword.
And this is such a sick start. Like, if either of these minions survive, +1/+1 straight away with Rakara on both of them next turn, because Rakara as a card buffs any minion that is that attacks. It doesn't have to be Rush in its own right here, as we are highlighting cards back and forth here. The Parade Leader, a huge deal as well, as it synergizes so nicely with the Dark Moon Riders. Just this whole turn looking so gorgeous.
I'll tell you what I don't synergize well with. It's your explanations. I'm sorry, I was supposed to highlight Rakara while you were talking about it, but I ended up going Parade Leader first. In any case, all the viewers need to know is that these cards are extremely powerful if only 1 minion sticks, and even if you just have the Dark Moon Riders in hand, the compounding effects are huge. And this is true mostly for decks that are required to get onto the board to have a win condition. Yeah. All of these synergies are often moots against, say, Priest that doesn't necessarily want to play minions. They can just wait for you to dump your hand and then clear it off all at once. But against Paladin, all of the damage, except for Hammer of the Naru, requires there to be minions on the other side of the board. And Hi3, even if he just plays Warmaul Challenger here, is in a great spot. But now he has conditioning for next turn, which is the ranked card from Warrior, which, what is this? It gives +2/+2 on the rank 2 to all of the minions in hand. So these little Dark Moon Riders can become 3/3s with Rush for 1 mana. Insane.
Yeah, this turn was a little interesting for Hi3. Like, buffing up specifically the Warmaul Challenger with conditioning is very, very powerful for +2/+2. So I was kind of looking at Rakara there because it was unlikely to die on the other turn as well, given that it would be a 3/3 at that point. But, I mean, if you just have a minion on the board and playing Rakara at that point, it's still very, very powerful because it means that that is going to get buffed up immediately. Rakara gets buffed up immediately. Everything just slots in so nicely.
However, Hi3 does need to hold his horses a bit because there is likely going to be a horse on the other side and Oh My Yogg. Oh My Yogg being the big one. He doesn't need to play conditioning to win this game, let's be honest. Even if you just play Rakara, take a trade, and then if there's Avenge, you can just use the Fiery War Axe to kill the other minion. He's still in a great spot. Doesn't need to play 3 cards.
It's a pretty big Oh My Yogg. That would have been very nice to get the conditioning. But as you said, still in a very good follow-up position. Sure.
Yeah. He's in a good enough spot that the conditioning is just a cherry on top. Would have closed out the game sooner, but really, just being able to stick a board here is all it takes to beat Paladin, because Paladin has such little reactive capability at the moment.
Doesn't even want to swing in with the weapon. I mean, honestly, I kind of liked going with the weapon hit there just to get a more survivable board, but you're still in such a good position nonetheless.
Yeah. It is all fine and dandy because, oh wow. Playmaker, again, another tool in this deck. This is only a one of in Hi3's list, but I think a bunch of other Tempo Warriors run 2 copies, where your rush minions, whenever you summon one, you get another copy of it with 1 health. Of course, these are just 1 mana 1/1s, so you don't get to fully appreciate how good it is. Still looks pretty good here, but once this card is paired with any cards buffed by conditioning, with Crab Rider, it becomes just super insane.
However, after Glory got some pretty disastrous draws with Sword, while already having a Sword equipped, he's then gone Kazakus into Hammer of the Naru. This is the top end of his deck. These are the premium draws.
And, ooh, he can take either the draw or the copy. I'm not sure if he took Stealth or Divine Shield, but I'm actually super interested in Stealth, just because against a deck that wants to rush everything, that's one way you can actually build a board where it doesn't immediately get picked apart by most of the cards in Hi3's deck.
This one is getting pretty close. Like, both decks have pretty terrible top decking capabilities, to be honest. I feel like Hi3's is probably slightly better, especially with the Alexstrasza still in hand, but who knows? This Golem could be the difference maker.
Could, but the way I'm seeing it, after Hi3 picks apart this board, I want to see the bumper car go in the Kazakus so he can start pushing face damage with the weapon. He disagrees, but it just looked like a really clean setup, even if you miss turn 8 for just Alexstrasza face into lethal, because the taunt that he has, the Sword Eater, is so problematic for Glory to deal with. They can't pick both Rush and Stealth. So it's either Glory would take the keyword that immediately gets rid of his taunt, and then you can respond to that minion, or he takes the board development and you still have a taunt.
Going with the full tempo variant here, there was the option, I think, to pick draw 2 cards, but in the end, full in on the tempo, which, if you were going to need an opportunity to swing things around, it would have to be right now.
Okay, well, not like he can play anything else, so you might as well Athletic, and if it's Yogg, okay.
Yep.
I'm just looking for a way for Hi3 to just push for Alex lethal. If he just goes all face, how bad is it, is my question. 8, 10, 11. Yeah, he can just put Glory to 8, right?
Yeah, none of the secrets stop you from going face, right? Unless... So maybe by that metric, you just don't play Athletic Studies in case something goes disastrously wrong and you blow up your own board?
Yes, or if you do play it, it's after attacking everything, with everything. Going this way first, I guess he is planning on trading some... Oh my gosh.
What?
Hello? Oh my god. That's just in his deck. Oh, I have no words. No words.
Imagine thinking Oh My Yogg does anything.
But realistically, even if he didn't get the Kargath and everything goes face, he still has a taunt on board. Glory has played Kazakus. I don't think there's a way Glory can immediately kill Hi3, nor stop the Alex coming down the next turn. So it was just a lethal setup. Either way.
no lethal damage that can come through even in the deck, really, is there? There's no random generation. Yeah, just a lock.
Yeah. The best would be like a double conviction, and then 1/5/5 has to go in, and then the other 5/5 is 11/5 question mark. And then the hammer goes face, which is just 14, and still would not have been enough. So I think Glory literally had no outs. So if I'm going to be super nitpicky, I do think it was correct for Hi3 to just armor up, send everything face, and not play a spell. But if you're going to get the Kargath style points, you know?
Yeah. No, I fully agree. I don't think there was anything to be done there. And Glory knew, I think, what was coming. One card had been in hand for the entire game, and it was the Alex Straza. Hi3 in his first on-stream match in Grandmasters, 2-0 against the world champion. He's got to be pumped, I would hope, coming into the start here. Again, one of the players trying to bolster the reputation of Korea, because for the longest time, I think we can agree, Korea was seen as the premier region in APAC. They had Surrender obviously flying the flag high way back in the day with Kranich, or more recently, obviously, we've been looking at Chonsu doing very well as well, but it's been a bit of a lapse in the past few seasons of Grandmasters. But maybe Hi3 as the new blood can reinvigorate that previous dominance.
Yes, you love to see it, especially since fan favorite Flurry did have to leave our Grandmasters program last season, and currently Dawn is not doing so well. Doesn't quite bode so well for them, but I've got high hopes because this deck from Hi3, I think I'm biased towards the deck. I just think it is so sick. It's unlike any deck I've played in Hearthstone before, because I was not a fan of those hand buffing archetypes that don't actually have a higher than 50% win rate. So this one feels like it's finally on the money, and this is not even the final form of this list yet. We're seeing already a bunch of lists tweeted out by very popular streamers and pros that have the Troublemaker on the top end, a bit more burst, don't have the ETC. There's a lot of innovation to be had, but that's also true of Hi3's last deck, this Demon Hunter.
And what are we looking at here? This is obviously a far reach from the OTK Demon Hunter. If anything, I would say it shares more in common with the Soul Demon Hunter that we used to see as a kind of damage route to get there.
I agree. I honestly had a lot of trouble naming this deck. I settled for midrange because you do have a curve that goes all the way up to Illidari Inquisitor, which is obviously... This card is the reason for experimenting with what is already established to be a strong archetype for Demon Hunter, which is OTK. You also have Il'gynoth in there because it's just straight up a good card, even if you're not running the spell damage plus Fellscream Blast. So for Hi3, this to me does just resemble Soul Demon Hunter without the fragments, and instead of Militia for the endgame, you have the Inquisitor.
It's a very interesting way to go about things. And to be fair, every time I've faced it on ladder, it's felt pretty good. There are obviously ways that it can go wrong. There's a lot of minions in the deck that don't go face. Like it's not as streamlined of a deck as OTK Demon Hunter, in which everything either draws, removes, or kills your opponent. But to be fair, for the most part here, you know, it's a lot of draw in the deck still, with Mana Feeder, Chaos Strikes, the obvious Skull of Gul'dan in the late game as well. I'm curious to see how it does, and I think at the very least it's a cool iteration of Demon Hunter.
One thing we did go over during testing is the inclusion of Warglaze of Azzinoth, which has not seen play for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
It feels awfully slow at the moment, and in the case of, say, this Paladin matchup, if you are going to use it to clear the board, you're often taking far too much damage. For Hi3, it's all about finding his Battle Fiends, his, I guess, Cult Neophytes you'll settle for in the early game, because he can certainly expect to fall behind on board.
Yeah, I think you just want as many ways as possible to activate the Bladed Ladies, because they get a little bit inconsistent without a Twin Slice available to the Demon Hunter anymore. And so just having the extra Warglaves to activate that, and again, obviously, against a wide board from Paladin, even if you're taking a lot of damage, it can be crucial to get the damage through nonetheless.
He does have a very expensive hand, and the Bladed Lady coming out early is doubly important to also just free up his skull from the left side. Raging Fell Screamer, not the best for that. The Mana Feeder, if he wants to get the draw of that, he has to coin a hero power, which sounds awful. So he's just going to play it out here, not coining Pursuit into the Murloc. That's a snap decision he made, which often feels bad, but I still think it's correct in the end. You need the flexibility.
Yeah, weird turns already though from Glory. Like the Safety Inspector turn 1 to discard the coin, sure, fully on board with that. But then going for the Murloc on turn 2 instead of the Sword of the Fallen did, you know, lock out, for the most part, Commander on turn 3, which felt like a nice development of stats. But I guess just having the Murloc on board for a potential conviction at any point is tempting, for sure.
Feels like Glory's just never happy with it, whatever secret he got. Like, I think he got Avenge looking over at what's gone from the deck list, but yeah, I think Avenge is a pretty good one to get because it's likely that Hi3 would want to kill the Argent Squire, and if he does, you get a giant Crab Rider, and if he doesn't, then you are just pushing more damage, forcing Hi3 to respect it.
Just works out pretty clean in the end, though, with a buffed up Elven Archer instead. It's kind of weird as to how you want to approach it now. Like, now that you've seen the Relentless Pursuit and thus the immune effect gone, going for Conviction here is kind of tempting just to push as much damage face as possible. It's a little bit difficult for them to clear it without just smacking into it with their hero.
Sure. I certainly would have thought about it if Glory had not drawn a better way to spend the rest of his mana, but he did get the 1-drop here, so I think that going for a bit more board is strictly superior because you just get double targets a lot of the time for Conviction next turn. A lot of the time is not all the time, true, but if Hi3 really wants to get rid of all these minions, it is the entire turn. The Warglaives is not even there at the end of this, so he is just getting rid of the Divine Shield. And Glory can turn on the gas.
Yeah, he knew it was a 50-50 at that point for the second Avenge or the Galloping Savior, so just saying it's too much damage if I proc the Avenge, it makes sense, but the damage comes through nonetheless. This is an insane amount, and with the Relentless Pursuit gone, and having actually increased the amount of damage on the board when it did come down, things just feel awful here for Hi3. You do start to question his decision to throw it down so willingly at the start.
There's no out here. Oh My Yogg can check the Fury, so can't get down the Bladed cheap enough.
Yeah, not this time. Too dominant of a start. Glory finally getting his foot in the door with the Paladin, and I mean, right out the gate, this Demon Hunter just fell flat on its face. It did nothing this game.
To be fair, this is certainly not the matchup you're hoping to run into with it. I think that the Paladin having too many minions in the early game is exactly what Demon Hunter does not want to see. I can see this deck perhaps getting more done against, say, Priest. Just having constant weapon swings where not all the priests run ooze, and if they do, it's often one copy. And then the Bladed Ladies are of a shape where, as we established, Priest's single target removal for big minions is not as good as it once was. And then the Illidari Inquisitors to close it out. But it does go to show that Glory is very experienced with this Paladin. He also respects it a lot, having banned it away from Hi3.
Yeah. And rightly so. I still think if piloted correctly, despite its pretty big hit in power level, Paladin is still undeniably right up at the top of the metagame right now. Obviously, it's going to be the Demon Hunter once again now for Hi3. It means it's going to be the Priest on the other side for Glory. A matchup that I would have to imagine does actually get quite a lot worse. Like, as you said, the Priest, they're going to really struggle to get any kind of dominant presence at the start of the game. Elusha can only do so much in this matchup because the really scary parts are those 8/8s at the end. The Illidari Inquisitor that just deal so much damage at the end of the game, and it's so difficult for Priest to fight back against that. I think it's going to be a tough one, and I like Glory's chances in his first on-stream match in GM.
Yes, I'm excited to see this matchup play out because I think if there is a reason to bring this Demon Hunter, it should be because you are setting your sights on Priest. This list is running double Raging Fell Screamer as well to cheapen those Illidari Inquisitors, which are demons. So there is a lot of damage potential from this Demon Hunter. I don't want to call it a true OTK, but if Priest isn't staying above 20 at all times, it starts to get scary.
Well, you'd have to imagine this looks like a premium starting hand for the Demon Hunter, unless you're hard mulling for, Skull of Gul'dan or something like that in the late game. Just threats on board at the start, getting that chip damage rolling. This feels like Soul Demon Hunter again. This is what you did in the early game before you closed it out with your burst.
And Hi3 is going right out the gate with the most damage possible. Yeah, his curve does work this way. Ooze into One Maker into Hero Power plus Mana Feeder Panthera. Not to mention the Ooze is an answer for the Sethic, which I think he absolutely has to respect.
Fury as well. Disgusting card to get off the One Maker here.
Definitely has a lot of synergy with this deck to make the Bladed Lady cheaper, goes well with the Warglaves, and just, any damage is good for Demon Hunter. And this rank card upgrades maybe not the same scale that you would expect from the others, where it's like 1, 2, 4 with a lot of these rank cards. This one goes 2, 3, 4.
That skull is very awkward, though. This hand is definitely slowing down now for Hi3. It's kind of the classic problem that you ran into with Inner Demon in the old school OTK Demon Hunter when it first came out, not the most recent version, where it can really lock your Skull of Gul'dan in place here. And so that's either, not coming down till turn 9 or 10, or you're just playing it to draw 3 cards, which, in this deck I think is fine. You don't have to cheat mana to win the game.
Agreed. And for Hi3, I was going to say, he still has a shot at sniping a skull off of the studies turn 7, but he is just going to start off with it here, look for some more powerful plays than just Chaos Strike, or maybe just a way to fill out his mana. But I do think can end up on Dreadlord's Bite here and then kill off the Scorpid that way.
Yeah, the Scorpion on the other side is the annoying part, because Valfiend Trainer just looks good here. I would happily slam that down on the board in this type of deck. It's not like the OTK where you have to go with Spectral Sight.
But the Spectral is still worth considering because he does still just have Chaos and Hero Power to kill the Scorpion. And then if you are expecting that your Skull is not going to be outcast, maybe you'd rather have a cheaper card draw option.
It's a tough choice. I can see merits for all 3.
True. Maybe do just take the Vile Fiend and not necessarily play it this turn?
Sure.
Okay. There's so many different ways to approach it. In the end, he plays it down here, accepts that it can get sniped by the poison, but it's still a lot of board presence. For Glory, though, he'll be happy that he has several AoE options. Like, too many, honestly. Is it Samuro to get minion presence? Is it Holy Nova plus Condemn?
So if you just go for Holy Nova or Condemn, you're clearing off everything except a 2-1 on the other side of the board, obviously with the trade of the Scorpion, which you would be fine with, I think. It's just the idea that maybe you don't have to. Like, these removal spells are probably not as good as having a Scorpion on board, which is why I am on board with going for this line at the end.
I agree. If the upside for saving an AoE spell still leaves a minion on their side and you don't have one in your own side of the field, in the end, I think the minion on board is more valuable than one more AoE in hand when you also have Samuro. So here we go for Hi3, going to take the rank 2 Fury to get rid of this Scorpid. Plays down the first Raging Fell Screamer, which means the Illidari Inquisitor can get some work done soon. Probably not next turn, but as you can see, after your hero attacks an enemy, this attacks too. And very often you will be attacking face to get that 8 to face immediately.
I also just loved the art on Illidari Inquisitor. I think those floating eyeballs are so creepy and cool.
True. Instead gets him Scorpid?
I mean, in all honesty, I'm looking at the buff spells. I was kind of wondering if you go Psych Split, because Samuro's Psych Split is a thing you can do. It would only cost 8 mana with the reduction from the palm readings, but it doesn't actually heal you until you find Apotheosis as well. So Gift of Luminance probably is a little more versatile.
Yeah, just for a bit more mana flexibility. But this is truly the spot where Priest starts to struggle, because Hi3 is at a spot where he doesn't necessarily need that much more minion development other than the Fell Screamer. Perhaps it's even better as a single minion on board to play around Hysteria to an extent. And Glory, he has a single Ooze in the deck, hasn't hit it, and doesn't have insight to fish, so Hi3 can start just chaining damage after damage. However, this is many chances to find Apotheosis for Glory.
Yeah, that was a fantastic pickup at this point in the game. He needs any chance he can get to find that healing. That, honestly, maybe you just point that at one of your minions instead of healing face. That's how badly you could need just finding some way to pull this back, because he is not winning this game right now.
True. I think he might have overdrawn if he had gone for that, so I'm okay with hero power here. And it's very unlikely both the Sethics are dealt with by next turn. But... oh? The respect?
Really?
Oh? I don't know, Derek. Clearly he wanted to play it to free up the skull, but missing the 8 to face?
I mean, he can hero power and attack face again, right? It still works.
Oh, true. Yeah.
But, yeah. It looks like he might actually just be going for the... okay, not going for the clear line. I respect it. As long as 8 damage goes face, I'm fine with this turn.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Okay, that's why Warglaves is in the deck. Pretty good. And Shadow Word Ruin can get rid of this Inquisitor, but the rest of Glory's turn is looking a bit iffy. Start with Studies, of course. Taunt, we'll take that.
You're definitely going to grab that one.
It's just unfortunate that he can't fit in a minion the same turn he plays the Shadow Word Ruin.
Yeah, if he goes for another Draconic Studies, and then, I don't know, Holy Nova plus Condemn and then Bump, it just doesn't really achieve that much. You may as well just go for the Shadow Word Ruin.
This is one of those turns that feels bad for Priest, where you are answering, but you're not swinging tempo. And you understand that Demon Hunter, they always run Skull one way or another, and that means that Hi3 can just refill, try to deal the lethal over a couple more turns.
I mean, he just doesn't even have to here, right? He can just play the Bladed Lady plus a bunch of attack buffs, swing face, clear the board.
Yeah. Murazon being out of standard is also just such a big deal.
True.
You're free to go Aldraki, Chaos, whatever you like, all in one turn. Priest cannot steal that healing from you.
And the fact that that first Fury was discovered or got off the Wand Maker as well means there's just another like 12 damage in the deck to come later on. It's so much damage. I just don't think the Priest even stands a chance against all of this. It's an onslaught.
Yeah, I think Priest's best game plan against a deck like this is to try and stick a Zyrella that the Demon Hunter really doesn't want to clear, which then means you stick a Apotheosis minion. Obviously didn't play out this way. Glory is not completely out of it yet, but I think he is close leaving the series already. Studies can get Sleepy Dragon? Okay, that's a clear.
Yeah, it looks like he's going with, what, Dream instead? Like, it just goes straight back to hand. It can just rush out again. Probably for 1 mana. I mean, obviously he's thinking you need Alexstrasza for heal to win this matchup, which is, I think, a perfectly reasonable conclusion.
Very true. And I think he's actually happy to not get the other spells off Ysera here. They are quite bad in this situation. He's still at rank 2 right now, so he's just a little short of immediate lethal. I'm not sure if the skull gives him chances to get it right now. We can take a look at what is left in Hi3's deck. He's just looking for damage, damage, damage. So the other Fury is where it's at.
Yeah, finding Il'gynoth is obviously a huge deal as well because he has the lifesteal still equipped, which I was definitely looking at on this turn. Instead, I mean, if he's starting with this, you'd have to imagine he's not going with the skull, or you'd just rip it right at the start, which is, again, reasonable. You can just go for a Bladed Lady plus Relentless to clear is honestly not the worst idea if you're afraid of Apotheosis, but even then, if they heal for 6, you can just keep pushing the damage phase. It kind of doesn't even feel necessary to clear.
I think Hi3's thinking for this turn was, best case scenario, I get the lethal right now. That's why he started with the Panthera, not the Skull, because the Skull would not have left him enough mana to play both Relentless and Fury that were already in hand. So, because he didn't get it, the next decision point he has to make is how badly am I going to respect Apotheosis? Or how much am I going to do that? And he says, I think exactly what you went over, even if it's there, Glory goes up to 11 max and I have a board.
Well, it does need the Apotheosis now, realistically, and with the Samuro, that would be devastating here if it was found.
Actually, that was wrong of me to say 11 max, because he also knows there's a Nightmare in hand. So Apotheosis, if Glory really wanted it to, could heal even more. In this case, Glory takes that big heal off of Alex, and Hi3, the Skull, took a long time to get going, but it has finally arrived on the turn when the Furies now give 4 attack each. Still short though. Ay ay ay.
8, 11, yeah, just didn't pick up any additional burst damage. It's that one turn closer to finding the Apotheosis. If it can be found for Glory, this is very winnable. He can stabilize this.
Is this Fury? I think he might just play Bladed Lady and Battle Fiends here. You get rid of the Ysera. Yes, it's a very flimsy board, but... okay, he can preemptively play the Furies and go face with them. Okay. Just ekes out more damage this way. Thinking about trading here. Apotheosis again, but...
Make them have it. They clearly don't have the Apotheosis. Like, you're in on a game plan where if they have it, you kind of lose. But that's better than trading here, because then they can have a million clears and you're just losing.
True. Condemn, Holy Nova, even just generated single target removals, Samuro, so I do agree with Hi3's ultimate decision here, but the top decks are really rough from this point on without the feed. Oh.
That's the Apo.
He's in it. Yeah.
He's not just in it, he is winning. Comfortably.
5.
Yeah, I don't think that Hi3 can wrestle his way back from this one. Pick your poison here. These all look great.
Oh my goodness. Priest healing, when it comes together, it truly is a sight to behold.
He even goes with the raised head.
Oh man. Okay, Glory.
Yeah, why not?
Flex on him.
Okay, that's the top deck.
Yeah, we're not dealing 29 Darrow. It's just not happening.
Yeah, we're not.
You don't pick the ones.
And the questions do start needing to be asked now for Hi3, because the Skull was delayed on multiple opportunities. The first time made sense, got the Bladed Lady down, pushed a lot of damage. The second time I think it started to make a little less sense, because he left himself very open to any kind of heal effect at any point. Like, he had so much damage over the course of the game, but I don't think he tried to maximize his potential. Again, going for Il'gynoth while you have the lifesteal weapon equipped is a huge deal, because you can double the damage buff that you're giving yourself effectively. I think he just saw the finish line and just started sprinting for the end, not realizing that it was further than he thought, and then he's just out of breath and has no puff to keep going.
What a beautiful metaphor, Derek. I mean, it's true. A lot of players get into that situation where sometimes you have, say, 3 to 4 immediate draws for lethal, but if you don't hit them, suddenly your game plan is a lot worse in the long run. And it's really, really tough to balance the actual value of, I'm just throwing the number 3 to 4 out there. I think it was Other Flurry, Il'gynoth, and that's it. For the immediate lethal when he went for the Mana Feeder Panthera turn, but certainly remains to be seen whether being that optimistic for the immediate lethal was the way to go there.
It's just what happens at the end of every boss battle. You see the tiny sliver of health and you're like, right, let's just spam attack and hope that gets there, and you lose your rhythm and then they get you, and none more perfect of a final boss than our current world champion, Glory, who does look a little morose, I guess, for some kind of malevolent, evil final boss being. But in the end, going all the way to Game 5. Now, the Demon Hunter has been the only 2 losses for Hi3. He made the Mage and the Warrior look super easy, and it's going to be the Demon Hunter Mirror to close things out here. Although I suppose Mirror may not necessarily be the most accurate of terms.
Very true. Glory is running a different archetype altogether with the OTK Demon Hunter. You still have Il'gynoth and Skull and 1 Raging Fell Screamer, but instead of those Inquisitors and weapon buffs to close out the game, you are running instead the Moarg plus Talented Arcanist plus Fell Scream, Blast, or I-Beam. And I honestly have not tried out this matchup from either side, but just looking at the fact that there's Ooze on top of all this healing, I'm not liking Hi3's chances, especially since it already felt like he should be favored against the Priest last game.
I don't know. I think this one could actually be really close. The Demon Hunter that Hi3 has rocking with Bladed Ladies, even just the Raging Fell Screamers plus the Illadaris, there's quite a few minions that are actually kind of difficult to clear. And again, for Glory, he has the ability to clear them, absolutely, if the cards come in the right order, especially with Talented Arcanist to bolster the amount of spell damage he's delivering. But I think there might just be a little bit too much stuff on the board for Glory to deal with, in addition to obviously the tremendous amount of from-hand damage that Hi3 can deliver. It's not to say that Glory is behind, because again, if he just draws all the combo pieces, then blows his opponent up, he's going to win this game. But I think this could be a very, very close one. And if Hi3 takes a deep breath, pilots it correctly, he could be in a perfectly good position to take the series.
Certainly there is a chance, and I'm looking at Hi3's list again, and now I'm seeing these cult neophytes. They didn't really do anything previously, but this is certainly a matchup where timing that right could be the difference between a win and a loss, because Glory, a lot of his removal is dependent on comboing several spells together, or say minion plus spell, and if you make the Fell Scream Blast too expensive, then that could be the 1 turn window Hi3 needs to actually stick a board, and already his hand is looking pretty great.
Yeah, I mean, that looked like a full keep, and if it was, I absolutely agree. You've got your 1 and your 2, a guaranteed Outcast Skull on turn 6 at the latest, maybe even earlier if you can find the Illidari Studies, and even Mana Feeder for turn 3. It's the perfect start.
It is, but I saw Glory's mulligan. He actually kept 1 Philosophy and Moarg Artificer. Not very often you do that in, or as this deck, Demon Hunter OTK, but looking at Hi3's list, there's actually no way to abuse the Moarg from Glory, because oftentimes...
Wow!
Yeah, the Moarg has only its effect on targeted spells, of course, and a lot of the time you don't want to play it for tempo because your opponent can say, if they're rogue, backstab this for 4. If they're also OTK Demon Hunter, I beam this for 1,000,000. But this is not OTK Demon Hunter. All the damage comes from minion attacks and weapon attacks.
That is so sick. I honestly hadn't even considered the possibility of keeping a 2-mana 3/5 here. Like, even when he kept it, I was thinking, oh, he's saving it for a big heal with Fell Scream, but he just slams it down on the board. And it's really, really annoying.
It's really good here. If Hi3 wants to clear it, he has to trade everything, so he's not going to do that.
That was sick.
Okay, I guess he is going to do that. But if he didn't, man, Fell Scream was also just a backbreaker there. So Glory can just go again. He copied it because the Philosophy was in outcast position. Okay, it doesn't have to be this turn, sure, but at any point when these Moargs drop, they are must clears because they potentially heal Glory back to full, and they have... they're overstated for 2 drops. It's really a good spot for this matchup.
So sick. It's just the kind of lateral thinking that you need not only to be a strong Demon Hunter, but, well, to be the world champion, you know, to have this ability to see the decks in the way that they are not intended to be played, but abusing powerful aspects that don't initially meet the eye. The downside, however, is coming into effect here. We can see he is completely starved of card draw because, you know, generally as Demon Hunter, you almost never keep cards that aren't ways to keep drawing cards through your deck unless you're against the hyper aggro decks. And now he's feeling that very, very heavily.
And this is starting to get into the mana range where just dropping Moarg doesn't quite feel as powerful because that can still get run over by a Bladed Lady, for example. Glory here choosing to get one Eldrazi online. He does leave a minion on board, which equals more immediate damage, but he is really valuing the Immolation / Throwglaive here because he has such little card draw. And also, kind of baiting Hi3 into extending a bit more sometimes just gives him better Moarg possibilities.
I kind of get the feeling that you're actually just supposed to, like, even if you have mana spare, you're not supposed to play the Illidari Studies here, right? Because you can Immolation Aura or Throwglaives, whatever, you know, find a way to clear the board. And then next turn, you can play it and play the skull at the same time. Whereas if you play it now, you get another card in the way of the skull. So I think,
I agree.
Again, even if you're just floating 2 mana, you don't play that on this turn.
I could see, like, Throwglaive, and float.
Yeah.
That's it, yeah. And I guess you could Hero Power and swing, but maybe just having the weapon equipped is more valuable at this point. Alternatively, there are lines where you just play a Moarg and Fell Scream Blast. You get to stick the minion. And yes, Bladed Lady is scary, but if they're going Bladed Lady this turn, they're unlikely to skull, which is a big deal. So, in the end, Glory goes for the board presence. It's brave.
Yeah.
Both options available for Hi3. He doesn't take the bait.
Yeah, the Moarg being on board this turn just doesn't really matter to him at all. I'm very fine with him leaving it up.
Okay, well. Sigil Runner?
Yeah, it has to be. Like, picking up another Philosophy when you've tempoed out 2 Moargs is tempting, but he needs the card draw here, or he is losing this game.
Just not there. 2 Spectral Sight, 2 Skull of Gul'dan, another Studies, and 2 Double Jump, and even Thalnos to an extent. Oh, and the Chaos Strikes. There's just so much card draw for Glory that he hasn't hit.
It's looking very, very likely for him to do it, but he's going to have to find it soon because Hi3 is turning up the heat. Double Bladed Lady available on this turn. I guess if your opponent hasn't drawn any cards, it's a logical conclusion to come with the fact that they have to have some kind of card draw in hand as the other cards, so maybe you don't play both the Bladed Ladies on this turn. But at the very least, Hi3 has the option to just go all in here if he wants to.
This is looking like it is the turn to push, and if you have the other skull in hand, I can absolutely see that happening. Glory needs a Miracle top deck here, and honestly, I feel bad that it's turning out this way because I think his lines he was taking at the beginning were so cool. Same with the Priest game that didn't ultimately end up working, but overall thinking was there. Okay.
Well, he has the clear.
Moarg, yeah, Immolation Aura is overkill, probably. Can you get away with just Throwglaive and stuff?
Well, you could just go Talented Arcanist and Immolation Aura, right? With
True.
Immolation Aura, yeah, it's just super clean. You don't even have to go with that, I suppose. Save the Arcanist overall.
The I-Beam. Yeah, this was the cleanest way to go about it. It's the swing here. Ay-yi-yi. Combo pieces, but not the whole combo.
Absolute garbage draws. And another skull for Hi3.
It feels like he's just stolen the skulls from Glory's deck now.
Yeah.
Oh, scary. Oh, cheapening the Inquisitor. He gets to ooze the Warblades as well. Oh, man. It's looking bad for Glory.
I know we were saying this last game against the Priest as well, but this has to just be absolutely disastrous for Glory. If he can't draw Skull into full combo in like 2 turns, he's just dying. He cannot deal with these big minions. Oh, there we go.
It's there!
That's the draw.
This is like the last turn, honestly, that it felt like it could still have an impact because Hi3 was just about to put an 8-8 on the board and keep drawing with Skull. Gets the double jump. Gets Spectral Sight. Glory is putting it together. He has not the other Fell Scream just yet, but it's coming together. The breakpoints are a bit different now that Talented Arcanist exists. Oh, man.
So he has 8, 16, 17 damage he can push on this turn. At absolute maximum. He doesn't need to do that, of course.
Correct.
But I think
I'm in favor of saving at least the 0-cost Relentless Strike.
yeah.
The one on the left is certainly tempting because he has Skull, but I would rather get an 8/8 down this turn.
I want to see one of the Illadaris on this turn, and
Right.
the 0 mana Relentless is kind of intriguing just because it allows you to get the Fell Screamer down as well on this turn. Which then, of course, opens up your possibilities next turn with Relentless plus another Illadari. Plus hero power as well if you wanted to.
So if you go Raging first, then you can just play the first Illadari for 3, right? And then...
True, yeah. I mean, I'm just thinking about banking the mana for next turn so that you can fit in both the
oh, I see.
Relentlesses, yeah. But this is like the expected line. You even get hero power this way, so you are kind of milking the most amount of damage with this line, assuming the 4/4 would get cleared.
Get a little bit less bored, but you do free up the Skull from the left, and in a way that's kind of banking mana as well. Close margins for sure. Either way, Glory is in a tough spot because a single minion that is tall is OTK Demon Hunter's worst nightmare to deal with.
He has a lot of the combo unlocked. It's just he doesn't have the spell, or sorry, the lifesteal spell, and he doesn't have the mana.
I'm just not seeing it. He still has a coin after all of this. I can't believe that.
Right.
Gonna keep cycling, looking for I-Beam, I have to assume. Skull?
Coin Skull? Not even sure what you're looking for at that point.
I-Beam in not outcast position.
Right.
But then you don't have mana? Okay, he clearly sees a different clear option. This is gonna wreck his combo, no doubt, but there's no way he can afford to not clear the 8/8, and because he is not healing, that means that Hi3 has the lethal Relentless Pursuit, second Illadari Inquisitor. He gets there in the end, the newcomer defeating the world champion.
It was looking incredibly scrappy there for a while, Gia. Starting off 2-0, I thought Hi3, and I'm sure he himself believed that he was in a great position. The Demon Hunter play looking a little bit shaky in some points, you've got to be honest, and I think he can look to try and solidify that. It's a very new archetype. We haven't had the chance to get a lot of reps on this deck at all, but at the end, that felt much more like it. A super clean game. I loved his early game where he was tempoing out these minions very aggressively to get chip damage. Early Skull, his partitioning of resources at the end as well with the Illadari Inquisitors. Very clean game, and as much as I appreciated what Glory was doing, as you pointed out, with the Moargs, it was very, very clever, but it just led to a complete dearth of card draw, which was his downfall in the end.
It really feels bad to say that because I think on average, that is still a really smart way to go about it. I think it increases his win rate compared to just taking the usual mulligan of look for just card draw, card draw, card draw in the beginning, because then he could get overrun by the small minions. Too much stuff on board that you were saying even before the match started is a possible aspect where the OTK Demon Hunter could struggle. Very same